It's 11 minutes past 7 right now, and we're going to turn our attention away from the weather for a bit to talk about politics, because tonight UKIP could lose control of its only council in England. That's because councillors at Thanet District Council are going to vote. They'll vote for the new leader after Chris Wells resigned because he lost support from the party. Many UKIP councillors also left the group. They set up their own independent section. Let's talk about this now. I'm joined by Labour councillor Karen Constantine and Tim Luckhurst, Professor in Journalism at the University of Kent. Karen, if I could start with you. So what's going to happen now? The Conservatives have the majority, so will they take over? I think they've got 21 members, haven't they?
Well, I think looking at the numbers, that seems the most likely thing. I think what we need to look at is it is actually time for this council to have a wake up and to shake up and to start putting the services that people need and people want and people pay for, to put those at the forefront and to get on with doing a great job for locals.
Do you mean that too much time has been spent discussing Manston?
That could well be the case, actually, as well as falling out amongst each other and being, quite partisan about who supports who. I mean, none of this serves the general public interest. None of this is helpful. I mean, we've got huge problems here in Thanet. We've got a massive housing crisis. We've got people sleeping out on the streets in this weather. Imagine that. We've got child poverty rates running at 35% of all young people under 18. And actually, if you come down to Thanet, you'll see that our streets are absolutely filthy, full of litter and dog mess. And on top of that, we've got unhappy staff at TDC. I've got reports of staff who haven't had contracts for more than 12 months. And I'm really concerned about ongoing outsourcing and shared servicing. And I want that stopped, to put the services for people in place to give the residents the best service that we can give them.
Now, it sounds like you're giving a manifesto speech. That's because you pretty much are, aren't you, Karen? You're putting yourself forward. Do you stand any chance of being nominated leader?
I think I might get nominated as leader. I think if that happens, I will do my best and I will put forward the Labour point of view, of course.
But you've got 6 councillors, so you can count on 6 votes. But that's probably
I would like to think that I could count on 6 votes. I would also like to say that we punch well above our weight as local councillors, picking up the main bulk of casework, looking after residents, and actually putting forward sane and sensible solutions to clear up the mess that's here, quite literally.
So you don't think it's a shoo-in then for the Conservatives?
I think it'll be interesting if the Conservatives come to power, because they'll be then faced with the same issues as Kent County Councillor Conservatives, which is how do they square the circle of trying to deliver public services against a reducing budget. And I'd like to see how they make a good job of that. In particular, think about what's just happened with the Housing and Local Communities Minister, Sajid Javid, who's just returned £817 million worth of money back to Treasury that was earmarked to help with the housing crisis. Now, I'd quite like my Conservative colleagues to explain how they're going to wrestle some of that money out of Treasury and bring that money down into Thanet to relieve our housing crisis, which is chronic, the worst it's ever been.
And finally, Karen, do you think this is the end of UKIP in Thanet?
I think it is.
OK, thank you. That's Karen Constantine, who is of Labour councillor there in Thanet, hoping to be nominated actually tonight. Let's turn now to Tim Luckhurst, Professor in Journalism at the University of Kent. Now, is she right? Does she stand a chance, or do you think actually the Conservatives will take the council tonight, Tim?
Well, there could be an outbreak of peace, love and understanding between the divided UKIP group, but I think it's highly unlikely. And so the reality is there are 25 UKIP councillors on the council, but 12 of them have, as you say, formed an independent breakaway group because they simply can't agree with Chris Wells and their other colleagues. The likelihood is that the 21-strong Conservative group led by Bob Bayford will form a minority leadership group on the council and will take the council forward. But as I say, there are no certainties except that we are witnessing the death throes of UKIP.
Oh, it's interesting though, isn't it? Because when you put it like that, it just seems quite apparent that UKIP are shooting themselves in the foot here. If they just united, they could keep control of the council.
That is certainly the case, but unity in UKIP since Mr Farage ceased to be its leader has been a very, very scant its can supply.
True that.
They simply loathe each other. And your Labour councillor makes a fair point that really this is a storm in a teacup when the council has strategic issues with which it needs to deal. And one doesn't need to agree with Labour's perspective about what those issues are to understand that there are really pressing issues which the council needs to get on with, not least the one on which UKIP has split, the future of Manston Airport. Chris Wells, the UKIP leader who resigned this week, believes that Manston has no future as an airport and that it needs to be developed for housing. There are many others in the area who agree with him about that, but there are very few in the UKIP group who are prepared to give him their support. So I think it's a Conservative council in Thanet, and I think that, as I say, UKIP is in its final minutes.
Well,
falling apart.
Tim, I was going to ask you about, we've got some local elections coming up. Do you think that we'll be, if you're a UKIP councillor at the moment, you may not be for very much longer?
I think that's a very, very likely outcome. Let's face it, I think the biggest single piece of evidence that UKIP no longer matter is that Labour, which was until very recently deeply worried about UKIP stealing Labour votes over issues such as the European Union and immigration, now is prepared to take up a pro-European position, is prepared to say that it will form a customs union if it were in government. And that suggests that Labour thinks UKIP is no longer a serious threat. I think that if I were a UKIP councillor, I would be worried about losing either to the left, to the Labour Party, or to the right, to the Conservatives. The country is not looking at UKIP as a serious party of government.
Tim, thank you. Maybe if UKIP are listening to that now, they will have that outbreak of peace, love and understanding. The death knells being sounded there. That's Tim Luckhurst, Professor in Journalism at the University of Kent. And we did actually ask every group on Thanet District Council to come and join us this morning and talk about the future. They declined the invitation.
Well, the UKIP did, yeah.
Yeah, the UKIP group, yeah. And in a statement, they said, UKIP group endorse dignified silence over ill-informed speculation at this time. Very dignified.